The journal's Equipped franchise examines the technology and tactics shaping modern warfare.
The F-35 is the most capable, the most lethal, the most connected, and the most survivable fighter aircraft flying on the face of the planet today.
First up, Lockheed Martin's new F-35 drone tech.
The F-35 is currently considered one of the most advanced weapons in the world. And in the coming years, its missions are set to become even more high-tech, with pilots flying alongside teams of drones, or what the U.S. military calls Collaborative Combat Aircraft, or CCAs. To control those drones, the F-35's maker, Lockheed Martin, is unveiling new technology for the cockpit. And Lockheed just announced a new drone that it says will be a CCA.
We've been building drones since the beginning, so for decades we've done this.
But after missing out on key contracts, can Lockheed and its F-35 stay in the game? We visited the company's Fort Worth facility to get a closer look at the jets and the secretive technology that could carry them into the future. Before we dive into futuristic drone flights, let's talk about the F-35.
The F-35 is the most capable, the most lethal, the most connected, and the most survivable fighter aircraft flying on the face of the planet today.
The jet's powerful engine allows it to fly 1.6 times the speed of sound. Its coding and design edges help it evade enemy detection, and its weapon bays can carry multiple payloads internally, including nuclear weapons.
The importance of putting them inside the plane is for stealth.
Yeah, the importance of keeping them in, having the weapons bay is stealth, right? So if you think the opening days of a conflict, then we're probably going to go in with just internal weapons.
Different versions of the F-35 can take off and land on different types of runways. Some can even lift off vertically to strike from unexpected airfields and ships.
This jet has tons of sensors on it.
Yes.
What do those sensors detect?
So with all the sensors on this aircraft, we can pick up missile launches, we can pick up aircraft, both friendly and adversary. We can see surface ships, we can see anything basically that's out there that's emanating some sort of energy. The F-35 has the capability to not only detect it, but geolocate it as well.
While a cutting-edge fighter from Boeing is set to enter service in the coming years, Lockheed says the F-35 is currently the best-positioned aircraft for flights of the future. The ones that involve teams of drones flying alongside pilots. Military officials say these missions would be particularly important in a war against China, which has been rapidly expanding its arsenal. For example, if Beijing were to try and seize Taiwan, F-35s could take off from an aircraft carrier, while several hidden CCA drones that they're commanding would take off from sites across the Pacific and sync up. Some CCAs could act as decoys, some could deploy electronic warfare, some could do surveillance, and others could strike defenses and key targets. As the battle unfolds, the pilots in the F-35s would command the drones to carry out their mission.
Lots of experienced pilots from the weapons school and Top Gun have come through here over the last 2 years.
In the company's FAST Lab, which stands for Future Air Superiority Technology Lab, I strapped on some biometric monitors,
Got that?
stepped into a simulator, and got to experience a small slice of what that kind of mission would look like.
So the scenario that we've got you in right now, Shelby, is you as a single F-35 are quarterbacking 4 CCAs.
Using software that Lockheed calls Angry Bees, I was able to tell 4 of my drones to attack 8 incoming enemy aircraft. On my tablet, it looked more like this. The drones have a high level of autonomy, and commanding them was almost like a video game that took just minutes to figure out.
Well, Miller time?
Miller time.
Mission accomplished.
But of course, we couldn't vet the tech with real drones, and what I experienced was a far cry from what it's like to fly in a real battle.
You're a pilot. How hard is it to fly an actual airplane and command drones at the same time?
These pilots that we're talking about are masters of their machines.
Former Air Force pilot O.J. Sanchez is now Vice President of Aeronautics for Skunkworks, which created the Angry Bees interface. Skunkworks is a storied but secretive unit within Lockheed that developed some of America's most advanced and classified weapons since World War II.
We've seen, especially in Ukraine, that drones can be controlled from the ground. Why is it better to control them from the sky?
The pilot that sees the airspace that is moving at the speed of the air war is in the best position to adapt and react at the speed of the fight. So in many cases, CCAs will be best controlled by the pilots at the leading edge of the air battle so that they can adapt, they can move, shoot, and respond to the situation in real time.
Even though Lockheed's F-35 will continue to fly for years, the road ahead for the company is full of competition. Lockheed lost out on the U.S.'s sixth-generation fighter jet contract, which went to Boeing. And for CCA prototype contracts, Lockheed has so far been beaten out by companies like Anduril and General Atomics. Lockheed said it did get a contract for the U.S. Navy's CCA Mission Control System, and Lockheed recently unveiled a new survivable drone that it hopes will be used as a CCA in the future. But as of yet, the military has not agreed to purchase it.
Do you see your company and Skunkworks particularly playing a big role in the future of CCA?
So we will absolutely continue to build CCAs. So we're not waiting to be asked by any particular customer. We're listening to our customers, trying to understand what's needed, and we're moving out and building products from a lineage of products that we think will change the face of the battle space.
What are your biggest concerns as we move into this new era of warfare?
Honestly, I think it's actually us humans, our ability to change and to go fast. So I think I worry most that we don't have enough of a sense of urgency. The technologists and the technology and the warfighters are more than capable of getting us to that future.
3,000 degrees and $3 worth of energy is all this laser needs to shoot down this drone, moving at 50 miles an hour. This is the BlueHalo LOCUST laser weapon system. Under a dozen are currently deployed with the U.S. Army in classified overseas areas to take down unmanned aircraft. In Ukraine and the Red Sea, drones are changing warfare, making it easier to cause significant damage with cheap, low-tech weapons.
The future of proxy warfare is here, and that is a technological standoff between human life and technology.
Laser weapons are one of several relatively inexpensive responses to drone threats. But compared to traditional weapons, there are challenges. They have a shorter range and limited power, and can be harder to fix when something goes wrong. The Pentagon has not confirmed that a laser has successfully taken down a drone in combat. Here's how the laser works, why it may be the most cost-effective new way to fight drones, and why there are significant hurdles on the battlefield. The LOCUST laser weapon system is a palletized high-energy laser, or PHEL, weighing in at 3,400 pounds and measuring 7 feet high by 7 feet long. The LOCUST can fit on the back of large Army vehicles like this Stryker. The weapon has two parts, the laser on the left and the tracking system on the right. The right houses an AI program that locks onto drones over 2 miles away, like this drone flying at over 45 miles an hour. The laser can take as many as 15 seconds to melt a target and can struggle to remain locked on it for long enough to take it down. Missile strikes, in comparison, are quicker, cause more damage, and can have a range 100 miles longer. The laser software is designed to look like a video game, like Call of Duty, and it's operated with an Xbox controller. That's so soldiers who are familiar with the software can quickly learn how to use it.
When we can align how we actually operate the system with those natural skill sets, it's very powerful. But it's also, honestly, it's also just elegantly designed from a user interface and implementation standpoint.
But actually hitting the target in a combat situation isn't easy. The LOCUST's power source here transmits energy through these 12 cables.
Here you can see those individual fiber channels that all come together. Each one of those represents a little bit of a different spectrum of light, all coming together into the beam control unit here.
Without the beam control unit, the light particles, or photons, in the beam would be loose and disperse before they get to their target. In the desert outside of Socorro, New Mexico, BlueHalo demonstrated just how precise its laser could be. This white rectangle is an 18-wheeler truck about a half-mile away. In just 1.5 seconds of beam contact, it melted this 2-inch steel coin glued to the side. The $2,000 Mavic is traditionally destroyed with missiles costing anywhere from $100,000 to $3 million. Though the LOCUST varies in price from $8 million to $10 million, it can be used over and over.
A cost per shot of a LOCUST laser weapon is really $3. The ability to have essentially an infinite magazine at a very, very low cost of engagement at very, very effective ranges across a wide swath of threats. And that's a very powerful addition to the arsenal.
But missiles like the Patriot have ranges of over 120 miles, while the Locust can go just about 3 miles. And with just a few working lasers on the market, there are many logistical and technical challenges ahead. Laser weapons have intrigued the public since their invention in the 1960s, but the Defense Department started taking more interest in the 1980s.
I know this is a formidable technical task, one that may not be accomplished before the end of this century.
And experts still face some of the same challenges today. First, there's heat. As energy travels through the power source, then the spectrum transmitters, up the cable, and into the laser head. Some is lost along the way. Without air conditioners keeping the inside of the machine cold, it would melt the delicate tech inside the Locust. The second is weather. Photons in the beam will bounce off of particles in the air like rain, sand from storms, or fog, dispersing the beam and making it less powerful.
No real difference than, in some degree, other weapon systems that can get impacted by sea salt or sand or humidity or any environment that they're operating in.
Both of these issues can lead to poor performance, like one February 2024 test of different lasers. Feedback from soldiers was not overwhelmingly positive, and they said that the lab and testing ranges were very different. When BlueHalo systems are deployed, there's another problem. Because laser weapons are so new, there is little infrastructure to maintain them. The Army has said it has been difficult to find spare parts and someone to fix lasers when they break in remote areas. For example, in African combat zones. BlueHalo says it aims to fix that issue by replacing specially made parts with mass-manufactured parts. For at least the next 4 years, BlueHalo will be providing on-the-ground engineering support for each deployed Locust. Other countries and companies are also developing lasers. The UK's Dragonfire had its first high-power firing against a target in March, with a cost under $14 a beam. Defense contractors like Raytheon and Northrop Grumman are also developing lasers for various tactical purposes, like this one that can fit in the bed of a pickup truck and this mini laser. BlueHalo, as well as other companies, plan on honing their designs so the lasers can be lighter, easier to maintain, and more effective. But concerns about these new weapons may continue until their long-term success is proven in combat.
This massive mobile peer system could one day be used to deliver an unprecedented number of troops and equipment in an amphibious invasion. It's being built by China in a shipyard constructing vessels that are changing modern warfare. As Beijing escalates its military activity around Taiwan and rapidly builds its naval and civilian fleets, China's threat to seize the island could be coming closer to reality.
To be able to deliver vehicles at huge volume straight to the beach without having to capture a port changed the calculus of whether China could successfully invade Taiwan.
Here's a breakdown of how these ships could set the stage for a D-Day style invasion. The vessels were built here, at this island shipyard in Guangzhou, China.
This is a major shipyard. It's used to construct both military and civilian vessels.
Thomas Shahed is a defence analyst and former Navy warfare officer whose research focuses on maritime competition.
This shipyard has been quite interesting to watch over the last year. They've had a number of very different vessels they've had under construction at the same time. Right here we can see 2 Soviet design, now built by China, amphibious assault hovercraft, a ostensibly military test platform unmanned surface vessel.
Among them, analysts noticed a unique set of ships taking shape, with distinctive jack-up legs that can stabilise them out of water.
And also the long ramps, you can see it here extended, from the landing platform all the way onto the shoreline.
Shahed says the ships represent a significant improvement in the People's Liberation Army's amphibious assault capacity.
We had never seen before this kind of matching set that were designed to go together in multiple sizes.
About 2 months after this satellite image was taken, the ships were seen on China's Nanshan Island, roughly 225 miles southwest. This is where the first known footage was captured, showing the ships in sea trials.
A couple of things were surprising about it. One was that they were all connected. Also seeing them lifted up out of the water, that was quite impressive. I had not seen anything quite like that before.
The ships did not transmit their location using the Automatic Identification System, or AIS, and the ship's paint scheme was now visible, which closely resembles the Chinese Navy's.
All these being indications that confirm for me that it is highly likely that these are PLA Navy ships.
Video footage, photos, and satellite images examined by Shahed and other analysts provide insight into many of their specifications and capabilities. There are 3 distinct types that have been classified by their hull length. The first is about 360 feet long, the second about 440 feet, and the third about 600 feet. When linked together with their bow ramps extended, they span nearly 2,700 feet. That's the length of 7.5 football fields. The ship designed to land on shore has a bow bridge that extends more than 400 feet, and it features 4 105-foot jack-up legs. The middle platform has 6 164-foot jack-up legs and 2 drop-down loading ramps, one on the port and one on the starboard side. The end platform has 8 180-foot jack-up legs and 2 drop-down loading ramps, one on the starboard side and one at the stern. The 3 ships were seen about 12 miles south 2 days later, where these systems were put to the test.
It was probably just a testing trial to be able to verify that they connect together properly, that they can connect to the bottom properly, and that ships can moor with these platforms in the way that was intended.
China regularly uses its civilian fleet of what are known as roll-on, roll-off ferries in military transport exercises, and has demonstrated they can carry some of its heaviest vehicles. The landing platforms appear specifically designed to link with these commercial ships.
It has 2 side ramps, one on each side, that can flip down, and we have seen them connect to roll-on, roll-off ferries that can basically back up to those ramps and drive vehicles off. On the side of the platform are what are called camels, which are these big rubber bumpers, essentially, that allow full-size ships to come up and nest up against the side of the platform. So the ferry that we see alongside here is called the Changlagongzhou. It is a ferry that has been seen in numerous times during PLA exercises.
Ferries like these have been used to offload equipment in various scenarios, including in ports, on floating causeways, and even in the open ocean. China has also used its larger roll-on, roll-off vehicle carriers in transport exercises between ports, but not with the PLA's temporary floating causeways, which couldn't accommodate their diagonal ramps. Satellite imagery suggests these landing platforms could serve that purpose.
What we see here is a vessel called the Shunlonghai. While it is not technically a normal pure vehicle carrier, it is a roll-on roll-off cargo ship, and it does have a diagonal ramp, confirming our suspicions that that's what that unique shape of that stern ramp was for. Additionally, it is possible that a ferry could back up to this stern ramp and also unload vehicles straight on out of the back, as we have seen them do with floating piers in the past.
With as many as 5 points of contact where ships could offload, the linked platforms could potentially transfer hundreds of vehicles ashore per hour, including some of the PLA's heaviest.
I would be very surprised if these structures and the bridges are not also built to at least those same standards and able to deliver any of the Chinese military's armored vehicles, including main battle tanks.
Within about 8 miles of the 2 sea trial sites is a base with Chinese amphibious assault craft, including hovercraft, landing craft that can deliver tanks to shore, and a military-specific roll-on, roll-off ship.
All of this equipment is designed to be used in what one would traditionally think of as a beach assault, something right over a beach, and would also be the first wave of troops that go ashore, probably in combination with helicopter-delivered troops and airborne troops in the case of a Taiwan invasion. One thing that these new platforms could potentially bring to the table is the ability to land troops at places even these vessels can't bring troops ashore.
Adding the landing platforms to the PLA's amphibious fleet would boost the volume of equipment delivered across the Taiwan Strait, and would also make more areas of the island's rocky coastline vulnerable.
One of the things that analysts and the Taiwanese military have been able to have some confidence in over the years is that there were a fairly limited number of locations where the Chinese could potentially land on Taiwan, thereby allowing Taiwan to concentrate its defensive efforts in those places. This could thin out Taiwan's defenses and make it harder to defend all the different places that now exist.
After the sea trials, the 3 landing platforms returned to the same Guangzhou shipyard, where China is building a second set.
One right here, one right here, and one right here.
US officials say Chinese leader Xi Jinping instructed the PLA to be capable of invading Taiwan by 2027. Most military experts agree China isn't ready to execute a full-scale amphibious invasion yet. but these landing platforms might be the key to making one possible in the near future. This is an Iranian-made Shahed drone. These suicide drones are cheap, precise, and hard to shoot down. Unlike traditional reusable drones, these are designed for one-time precision strikes. In just the past year, Shahed drones hit commercial ships in the Red Sea, threatened the lives of US troops in the Middle East, and wreaked havoc in Ukraine. And Iran's willingness to share them with its allies poses an increasing threat to the US and its global partners. The Iranian Shahed is a family of kamikaze drones that self-destruct when they reach their target. The family is made up of 3 types of drones. The first edition 131, which is the smallest and lightest, the newest 238, which uses jet power and is believed by experts to be the most expensive, and the most commonly used 136. The Shahed 136 is 11.5 feet long, weighs 441 pounds, and is made out of relatively cheap materials.
The really comparative advantage of these drones is that it uses commercial parts. It's not that sophisticated. The engine itself is just a regular 4-piston engine. The propeller isn't anything fancy. The airframe itself is maybe some carbon fiber to make sure that it doesn't weigh too much, but overall it's fairly cheap to produce.
The drone has a delta wing configuration and uses a light frame to carry over 100 pounds of explosives. Iran claims it can reach pre-programmed targets up to 1,500 miles away. They're usually used in a salvo launch. That's when multiple weapons are fired simultaneously to overwhelm the enemy's defences. They're deployed from a truck and are initially boosted by a rocket, but shortly after, a twin-blade propeller and a smaller piston engine take over. The piston engine makes the drone relatively slow-moving and gives it a loud lawnmower sound. The drones fly at low altitudes, making them harder to detect because air defences tend to be aimed at higher altitude threats, but they can be vulnerable to simpler defences, like anti-air guns. Shahed drones are also quite small and harder to detect with radars compared to their larger counterparts which fly at higher altitudes. The Shahed 136's relatively low production cost of around $50,000 has meant that Iran can produce a lot of these.
Iran doesn't have the resources to, what we in the military say, like gold plate their stuff. They can't make everything multi-mission and beautiful and exquisite. They have limited resources. They have to use those resources in ways that fulfill their objectives, and so they're able to scrap all these pieces and parts and put them together. And sometimes it works, and a lot of times it doesn't, but in the case of the Shahed drone family, it's been pretty effective.
Take the US Reaper drone, for example. When it's loaded to its maximum capacity, it's over 20 times the weight and double the speed of the Shahed 136. Its purpose is not only to strike a target, but to assist in intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and combat search and rescue. And it can be used numerous times. But at around $30 million a piece, it costs much more than the Shahed drone. The primary advantage of the Shahed 136's low cost is the ability to keep producing and deploying them en masse without breaking the bank.
In salvo launches, you're launching a bunch of missiles, rockets, drones at the same time, hoping that they will penetrate defenses because there's just so many that you have to counter.
Still, the Shahed 136 has its drawbacks.
They're not good at not getting shot down. They operate in this space between regular drones and cruise missiles. And so they do have deficiencies operating in that middle space. They're not this golden child that works for every purpose. They're relatively slow. They are very loud, so they can be detected early. So in terms of using a few of these at a time, that's not an option for the attacker.
But the Shahed drones have been a critical part of Iran's strategy of proxy warfare. It has shared these drones with militant groups in other countries as a way to challenge its rivals without directly being involved in a battle.
The Shahed drone has made proxies more capable. Iran relies on its proxies for its own security and for its own regional interests. It has historically provided weaponry so that they can remain strong, so that they can remain operating in the region. And so drones are just another means to do so. And now we're seeing especially their use by Russia against Ukraine.
In 2022, Iranian officials agreed to transfer drone designs and key components to Russia. This enabled Russian forces to create their own new and improved version of the Shahed 136, overwhelming Ukrainian defenses and targeting civilian infrastructure.
Russia has specifically been using these drones in larger salvos against Ukraine, particularly striking against civilian infrastructure. And here we're talking about oil facilities, electric facilities, the grids.
Moscow plans to manufacture 6,000 drone units based on the Iranian Shahed 136 by 2025. These drones are expected to feature improvements such as active seeking and enhanced resistance against GPS jamming, which will enable greater precision.
Iran has directly sold licensing and training and basically the know-how involved in developing the Shahed drone to Russia. So now Russia is developing an industrial capacity to produce these drones on its own.
But in Ukraine, outdated anti-aircraft guns are proving surprisingly effective in defense.
They're old, but they work. Ukrainian military officers and officials, they know how to use them, they know how to get on these guns and shoot drones down. But again, it's hard to know when these attacks are coming, and it's hard to shoot down everything when it's coming in large numbers.
But defense mechanisms against these drones are continually evolving.
You need sensors that can actually detect and track them and identify whether they actually are a threat. And you need interceptors that are capable of taking them down safely.
So countries are investing more money in counter-drone technologies and defense measures.
We're seeing the United States invest in a variety of means of missiles, of guns, of counter-drone drones. It's all of these things to counter this small drone threat. The problem is that we don't have a lot of them today, and we also need to distribute them across areas of interest in which adversaries are using these small drones.
But once those defenses are honed,
I think we'll see fewer successes of the Shahed and its family of variants. People think that they're invulnerable, but they are not. You can take these drones down. It is just a matter of building up those defenses and spreading that capacity to people who need it.
Still, drone warfare is set to evolve rapidly, with faster jet-powered models like the Shahed 238 creating a diverse and increasingly tough threat.
This is said to be a launch of an FP-5 cruise missile nicknamed Flamingo. Recently unveiled by Ukraine, the jet-powered weapon is believed to be capable of carrying a 1-ton warhead. It can reportedly hit targets beyond the reach of Ukraine's existing arsenal.
If it's as long range as some of the trade press say it is, then that would be very useful for Ukraine because it would give them a more precise, speedier way to target all the assets that have been targeted.
Unlike most modern Western-made cruise missiles, which are being designed to be smaller, Flamingo is big. It has a 20-foot wingspan. By comparison, a US-made Tomahawk cruise missile has a wingspan of under 9 feet.
It could potentially carry a much larger warhead, which would give it a lot more explosive power, and it could potentially carry a lot more fuel on board.
While both missiles can travel at similar speeds of almost 600 miles per hour, Flamingo has a range of around 1,800 miles, according to its manufacturer. That's up to 300 miles further than a Tomahawk, meaning Kyiv could use Flamingo to hit targets deep inside Russia.
So Russian military facilities, Russian military production, and then more commercial assets like oil refineries and oil production and big economic targets, basically.
As well as being larger than most Western designs, it is also simpler. It has fixed wings instead of ones that fold, a carbon body, and is powered by a large external turbofan engine. Analysts say this all helps keep production costs low and means that Ukraine can produce more at a faster speed.
The engine is above fuselage, which reminds you of arguably the very first guided missile, which was the Germans' V1, which they used to use to target London.
It sounded like a tank in the sky.
And it bizarrely actually looks, it's a real sort of, throwback to the very origins of missiles.
Analysts believe Ukraine will likely use Flamingo to target Russia's oil and gas industries, which are critical to helping fund its war in Ukraine.
It's financing the war, which is why the West has always tried to target Russia's energy exports. And The US is now hitting India, for instance, with secondary sanctions as a result of this in a way to hit Russia where it hurts.
I've been very disappointed that India would be buying so much oil.
Kyiv has already used long-range drones to successfully hit several refineries. According to estimates, drone attacks over the summer shut down facilities accounting for at least 17% of Russia's oil processing capacity.
Their drone campaign's been very, very effective. In some areas it's led to rationing of fuel. I mean, it's particularly humiliating for Russia, which is one of the biggest energy suppliers in the world.
However, experts say much of the damage so far has been repairable. But Flamingo's high payload could increase its impact.
When we hear talk of, Ukrainian drones have taken out this in Russia, people think one drone sailed over there. It's likely that the area was bombarded with a lot of drones over a big period of time. A cruise missile is far more likely to hit the target because it's much faster and because it is much more likely to have a larger warhead. It's just going to do a lot more damage.
The fact that Flamingo is made in Ukraine offers additional benefits. While Kyiv already has a number of long-range weapons supplied by its allies, some come with restrictions on where they can be used, including ATACMS, a US-built ballistic missile.
The Americans let them use ATACMS for a while, and I'm sure they were very helpful, but they would only let them fire them at certain ranges, and I'm not sure how many they gave, and apparently these have not been fired for a long time. So in terms of missiles, they've never really had that capacity. This would give them that at last. So they don't have to go with the begging bowl to other countries, and they're not, subject to another country's whims.
By domestically producing its own cruise missiles, Ukraine is hoping to secure long-term deterrence and financial benefits.
The Ukrainians want to make this a big industry in the post-war years. It wants this to be an engine of its economic growth. So that's another reason why they are really placing a lot of emphasis on this.
While Flamingo can pack a punch, its sheer size makes it easy for Russian air defences to detect and hit. To combat this, experts say Ukraine may try sending multiple missiles at once. But that requires significant investment.
The problem for Kyiv has been for some time that they don't have the money to produce it. So for instance, they were really talking up their ability to produce a ballistic missile. And when I talked to Ukrainians, they talked about another test, if not actual use, at the end of last year or the start of this year, and that hasn't gone to plan. And likewise, they've been looking to produce more missiles for some time. They do actually have other missiles. One's called the Neptune. It's also a cruise missile. And they say they just don't have the money to produce them.
Experts warn that as a single weapon, Flamingo is unlikely to change the war on its own.
The Storm Shadow was supposed to be a game changer. It's been very useful and very effective. Ukrainians love it, but it certainly wasn't a game changer. And then the F-16 was supposed to be something of a game changer, and it didn't really do that much at all. So there's not that much that can possibly be a game changer.
Despite this, the manufacturer says it aims to produce around 200 Flamingos a month by October. But experts have concerns. As well as budget constraints, analysts warn Ukraine may struggle with a lack of available parts, particularly the turbofan engines.
The Ukrainian defence industry has been targeted a lot by the Russians. That's a problem. You've also got to bring things in across the border. And then, the more you move things over longer distances, the more it's susceptible. So it's much harder. I'm sure they have manpower issues in terms of the actual manpower that they do have. Of course, many of them are in a military capacity now.
Experts say Flamingo will help Ukraine become more self-sufficient, but warn it's unlikely to have an immediate impact on the battlefield, where Russian forces are pushing forward.
It will have an effect in further putting pressure on Russia within Russia, Russian economic assets, the Russian defense industry. It will definitely put further pressure on them.
This is a GBU-57, known as a massive ordnance penetrator. At 20 feet long and weighing 30,000 pounds, it is the world's largest non-nuclear bomb and can destroy targets buried deep underground, earning it the name Bunker Buster. To destroy Iran's heavily fortified nuclear facilities, experts say these are the conventional weapons with the best chance of success.
This is a big sucker. It is called the Massive Ordnance Penetrator, which basically sums up what it is.
Here's why the MOP represents Israel's best chance at destroying Iran's facilities, and why it can't do it alone. The MOP is the largest bunker buster bomb in the US arsenal. It's designed to penetrate hardened targets and plow through almost 200 feet of rock before detonating. Due to the MOP's weight, they can only be carried by the biggest bombers, such as B-2s. One bomb is unlikely to burrow deep enough to hit Iran's nuclear facilities by itself.
The metal is going to melt at some point, and so it does have limitations in terms of how far it can penetrate, and that's why you may have to follow it up with multiple instances. You drive a wedge in, it expands, and then you continue to drive it in the second time, and each time it's more effective. In a sense, you're trying to create an earthquake. You're trying to crack the mountain and to channel that seismic energy down to make whatever is under there, whatever facility is under there, shake around a lot.
The MOP is equipped with advanced guidance systems, including GPS, to allow for accurate targeting. It is also fitted with a delayed fuse, which allows the bomb to explode after it has penetrated its target.
You're going to wait until it gets down in there before it blows up, because you want to maximize the energy. Every foot counts in order to get it deeper to burrow down and have the effect.
Since it launched its campaign against Iran's nuclear program, Israel has damaged critical nuclear infrastructure and killed scientists. Iran has denied trying to build nuclear weapons and says its nuclear program is peaceful. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, Iran already has enough highly enriched uranium to make around 10 nuclear weapons. Satellite images have shown damage at nuclear facilities, including Iran's largest enrichment facility, Natanz. But one key location remains unscathed, the Fordo fuel enrichment plant, where Iran produces highly enriched uranium. It's hidden in the mountains and is believed to be buried up to 295 feet below ground.
It's harder to hit deliberately so because the Iranians buried it under a mountain. Look, the US put NORAD under Cheyenne Mountain. It's way down under a lot of granite and a lot of rock. And you want to raise the threshold for your adversaries to hit something. Sometimes it's just really useful to bury it.
While Israel has bunker busters, none of the ones in its arsenal are powerful enough to penetrate deep enough to hit Fordo.
This is why the Israelis probably need U.S. assistance. The Israelis have a lot of bombs, but they need things that can kind of crack the mountain and create a wedge to create the tremors and to create vibrations that will be helpful to destroy the facility.
In addition to lacking the weapons to destroy Fordo, Israel also lacks the heavy bombers. Its ally, the US, has both.
Fundamentally, there's a choice here to be made about whether it is in the U.S. national interest to take out Fordo, to take out the Iranian nuclear program once and for all.
This is a Russian glide bomb. Moscow has been launching thousands of them at Ukraine in recent months, putting further strains on the Ukrainian army and helping Russia make some territorial gains. Glide bombs are cheap, highly destructive, incredibly hard to stop, and are predominantly made from retrofitted Soviet-era explosives. Here's how Russia is giving old bombs the functionality of a modern cruise missile at a fraction of the cost. Russia is able to produce large numbers of glide bombs quickly and cheaply, and that's mainly because they aren't new weapons. Most of them start out as general-purpose bombs from the Soviet era, known by their Russian acronym FAB, which means High Explosive Aviation Bomb, something that Russia has huge stockpiles of.
They're very simple munitions, Soviet-era, so-called dumb bombs to be dropped from aircraft. And the main characteristic of them is that they are massive.
There are three sizes of FAB bomb reportedly being used: the FAB 250, FAB 500, and the FAB 1500. The higher the weight of the bomb, the more explosives it carries. The largest, the FAB 1500, weighs 1.5 tons and contains around 1,500 pounds of explosives, making it capable of levelling buildings. For comparison, a standard Russian 152mm howitzer artillery shell contains around 17 pounds of explosives.
They are very effective at obliterating Ukrainian positions. So Ukrainians, if they're in cities, will often take up positions in basements, places that would give them some shelter from most artillery rounds. But the destructive power of these bombs is such that they can bring down buildings above these soldiers.
By fitting them with a Universal Planning and Correction module, known by its Russian acronym UMPK, these dumb bombs effectively become guided missiles. This piece of kit contains a satellite navigation system that can be programmed to hit targets. Rudders are attached to the tail to aid steering and to stabilize the bomb in flight, while the pop-out wings help the bomb literally glide to its target, making it more accurate over longer distances. And with a range of just under 40 miles, the Russian Air Force can launch them at Ukraine without ever leaving its own airspace. Retrofitting the Fab bombs only costs tens of thousands of dollars, a fraction of the cost of a purpose-built guided weapon. And they are also easier and quicker to manufacture.
We've heard a lot about Russia's wonder weapons, its modern weapons like the hypersonic Kinzhal missile. But the beauty of these glide bombs, as far as Russia is concerned, is that they have a lot of them. They can quickly make it into an effective weapon that they can use. And we're at a stage of the war where the economics matter.
Jets like the Su-34 bomber allow Russia to launch multiple glide bombs at once in a bid to overwhelm Ukraine's air defense systems. And that's not their only advantage. The weapons themselves are very hard to shoot down.
Well, they give off a very small signature. They're relatively small in size. They only show up as small dots on a radar. And so the Ukrainians don't necessarily see them coming.
One of the glide bomb's limitations is they can't hit moving targets, making them less effective on mobile battlefields. However, Russia has been able to use them to target cities and to break down Ukrainian fortifications, with the Ukrainian military estimating that Russia has dropped 16 times more glide bombs this year than last. And Moscow has been using glide bombs against Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, which is around 25 miles from the Russian border.
On May the 25th, 2 Russian glide bombs hit a Ukrainian home improvement store called Epicenter. It's like the Ukrainian version of Home Depot. This is actually causing damage and destruction not only on the front lines, but it's terrorizing the civilian population as well.
Russia also used glide bombs in its assault on the eastern city of Avdiivka earlier this year, with some military analysts saying the weapons were key in enabling Moscow to capture the city.
Russia began dropping so many bombs on the city that it became simply impossible for the Ukrainians to hold on. This is the first time that Russia has really used them in such a concentrated fashion to blast Ukrainian defenders out of a city.
Moscow says it is now scaling up production of its glide bombs, and analysts warn there is evidence Russia is working on creating bigger, more explosive versions, including one that weighs 3 tons. As well as experimenting with different kinds of warheads. With glide bombs helping Russia replenish its weapons stocks quickly and cheaply, Ukraine is looking for its own solutions.
Ukraine wants F-16 fighter jets. These can be used to strike down the Russian planes before they're able to release the bombs.
However, some analysts say because F-16s face the risk of being shot down by the Russians, Ukraine should instead focus on electronic warfare tactics.
Electronic jamming is a potential way to stop these bombs because they rely on guidance systems. There's a big question as to whether Ukraine has electronic warfare systems that are powerful enough and numerous enough to counter this threat.
Analysts also say more advanced air defense systems like US-made Patriots would allow Ukraine to shoot down Russian fighter bombers. But that's only if they can be located close to the front line.
The Russians have very strong surveillance from drones, and they can then try to strike the Patriot batteries if they're brought close to the front. So the question for the Ukrainians is how to balance the need to protect civilians, to protect cities, and the risk of taking them to the front lines to try to intercept Russian aircraft.
Because glide bombs are affordable and can be quickly replenished, analysts believe they will continue to play a significant role in Russian attacks in the coming months.
Glide bombs have been a very effective way to smash Ukrainian positions, to kill defenders, to break defenses, and to get through and take more Ukrainian territory. If the Ukrainians are able to stop that, they'll have a much better chance of holding their positions against the Russians.
The Pentagon has been secretive about the weapons and intelligence used in its controversial strikes on alleged drug boats in South America.
It's all classified, we can't talk about it now.
But the department's own videos show munitions and markings that offer clues about some of the platforms used to take out more than 25 boats and kill more than 100 people, numbers that are only poised to rise. Here's what we know about two of the weapons that are being used in the campaign. First, there's the Ghostwriter, also known as the AC-130J gunship. These are highly modified C-130 planes made by Lockheed Martin. They're about as big as a 737, they're operated by a crew of airmen, and they're armed with some serious weaponry. Toward the front of the aircraft is a single-barrel 30mm Bushmaster automatic cannon that can shoot up to 200 rounds per minute. When fired, it looks like this. Further back on the left is the biggest gun on the plane, a side-firing 105mm howitzer that can shoot different types of artillery shells. Those cause a much larger explosion. Then under the wings are hardpoints that can carry 4 munitions per side, like GBU-39s and Hellfire missiles.
Rifle away. Good, hold it.
Air Force officials say the Ghostwriter's main purpose is to bring troops home, so the aircraft has historically been used to provide close air support and bomb threats that are approaching friendly troops. But in recent months, the AC-130J has been deployed to the Caribbean. And based on videos of the strikes, experts say the gunship is being used to attack alleged drug boats. For example, they say this is the gunship firing on a submersible. The long green crosshair matches that in other AC-130J videos. And the rounds appear to be from the 30mm autocannon. You can see them come one after the other. The strikes can also look like this. To operate the weapons, the AC-130J requires a crew of airmen. An aircraft commander and co-pilot fly the plane, a combat systems officer, or CISO, and a weapons systems officer, or WISO, control the triggers, and 4 special mission aviators handle the munitions, load the guns, and conduct maintenance. Each AC-130J costs about $165 million, can fly 350 miles per hour, and has a range of 3,000 miles, which can be extended with aerial refueling. From where it's been spotted in El Salvador and Puerto Rico, that puts the aircraft well within range of drug smuggling routes in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. Then there are MQ-9 Reaper drones, which are also deployed to the Caribbean. These drones, made by General Atomics, are remotely piloted aircraft that can collect intelligence and strike targets. The Reaper transports weapons under its wings and can hold up to 3,800 pounds of munitions. The hardpoints on the aircraft can carry all kinds of different laser and GPS-guided munitions, including Hellfires, Paveways, and JDAMs. Service members load munitions by hand, sometimes with the help of a vehicle. And because the aircraft is highly flexible, it can carry several different kinds of munitions at the same time. Experts say several strikes in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific appear consistent with Reaper markings. Each Reaper is controlled by a pilot and a sensor operator working from a ground control station. The pilot manages the aircraft's flight path and movement, and the sensor operator manages the sensors and guides the munitions. The Reaper's advanced sensors make it much more than a weapon. It's also used to gather intelligence and conduct surveillance and reconnaissance. At 36 feet long, the Reaper is about a third of the size of a 737, and it can fly for more than 24 hours at a time. One Reaper costs about $16 million, according to General Atomics. The U.S. strikes began in the Caribbean in September, but have since ramped up in the Pacific, signaling a broader and sustained campaign. Members of the Trump administration have accused the people transporting the drugs of being terrorists.
These are a direct military threat to the United States of America. They're trying to drug out our country.
But some members of Congress say they are alleged criminals. And since they aren't in an armed conflict with the U.S., the strikes on them are illegal and a possible war crime.